In this 13th installment of Taking Up Space, I'm going to once again riff on the episode number, this time the number 13. Nope, I'm not talking about Apollo 13, but rather the 1985 Soviet mission of Soyuz T-13, a mission that set out to save their badly crippled space station, Soyuz 7. In this episode, I'll highlight an artifact of that mission, reintroduce you to my buddy Felipe, and share a story about what the two of us did as teenagers with a little bit of math, some basic equipment, and a lot of ingenuity. It's that story that makes today's artifact so special to me. Phil, this one's for you, buddy. And away we go. Hello collectors and space fans, I'm Jim Frangione and welcome back to another installment of Taking Up Space, the place where space history lives and where every artifact tells a story, where we seek to preserve artifacts, reveal history, and hopefully inspire some of you in the next generation of space explorers to take up interest in studies relating to science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. If you're as passionate as I am about the history of spaceflight and the preservation of space-age history, be sure to click on the subscribe button and notification bell down below so that you don't miss out on a single episode. Today's artifact has a really cool story to reveal. It touches on one of the most daring space missions ever flown in the Soviet space program, and for me, it's also a significant personal reminder of my youth, a time when following Soyuz T-13 was an obsession for two young teenage boys living in New Jersey. The artifact that you see here is a signed photograph of the crew of Soyuz T-13, Vladimir Dzhanibekov and Viktor Savanyik, taken during their training at the Baikonur Cosmodrome. It's framed with a Soviet-era flag and a Salyut program patch. Colorful and pretty catchy to the eye, it always makes for a great conversation piece. So let's start that conversation, and to do that, we're going to have to turn our time machine back to 1985. On June 6, 1985, these two cosmonauts set out on a voyage to a badly deteriorating Soyuz 7 space station with a mission to dock, repair, and reactivate this ailing outpost to keep her alive long enough to support the additional missions necessary to prepare for the launch of their next generation space station, Mir, in 1986. For the heroic efforts necessary to accomplish this, Soyuz T-13 is often viewed as the Russian version of Apollo 13. It was a high-stakes drama, so much so that, like Apollo 13, we saw the theatrical release in 2017 of a docudrama film titled Soyuz 7, based heavily on the diaries of cosmonaut Viktor Savanyik. Like Apollo 13 the movie, it's dramatized some for cinematic effect, but the main story is largely intact. It's an absolutely fascinating film that you can find on Netflix, and the drama goes something like this. The Soyuz 7 space station is powerless, frozen, and tumbling. Vladimir Dzhanibekov would have to manually attempt to match those rates with his Soyuz spacecraft, and then dock with the dead and rotating multi-ton space station, a harrowing feat in and of itself. From there, he would use the Soyuz to stabilize the entire platform from its tumble, and they would then seek to methodically restore power, livable temperatures, and life support systems. Battling long odds and extreme cold and heat, they succeeded, and Soyuz 7 would live to support not only the arrival of Cosmos 1686, itself a space station-sized habitable module that would perform tests in advance of Mir's modular design, they would also welcome Progress resupply ships, as well as the crews of Soyuz T-14 and Soyuz T-15. The efforts of Dzhanibekov and Savanyik proved to be a spectacular success and a stunning demonstration of human capability in space. They were hailed as heroes then and are still revered as such today. Their courage and skill truly conquered the impossible. If this story were all I had to offer you about this artifact, it would be more than enough to stand on its own. But there's more to tell, and that part of the story is a bit more personal in nature. And to set the stage for that, we must go back a little further to 1983. Back in episode 6, I introduced you to my lifelong friend Felipe, or Phil as he's more commonly known. He was the one who got me the Fred Hayes autograph that we highlighted in that episode. And this portion of this episode is our story. With the space shuttle program in full swing and new space first pouring out of the space program, these were incredibly exciting times to have an interest in human spaceflight. It was also NASA's 25th anniversary, and there was plenty of fascination and coverage in the media. But you must understand something. Our interest wasn't remotely close to casual. We followed space and astronauts and cosmonauts like most others our age followed sports, teams, and athletes. NASA was our team. Reading this September 1983 issue of National Geographic proved to be a game changer for us. In it, there was an article highlighting the upcoming 9th mission of the Space Shuttle, the Space Lab flight of STS-9, another article about the evolution of telecommunications, weather, and Earth resources satellites, and one about a new constellation of satellites that would one day lead to troops and scouts being led by electronic devices and satellites instead of a compass, a little thing we now know today as GPS. But tucked away on page 327, Phil picked up on two very small but very important paragraphs. A British physics professor, Geoffrey Perry of the Kettering School for Boys, was teaching his students how to actually track and listen to satellites. Our minds were blown, and we wanted in. From there, Phil wrote to NASA for as much educational material as he could get his hands on. We cobbled together some surplus equipment where we could, and we scoured amateur radio books and magazines to figure out how to make all of this stuff come together. We tinkered, and we also found mentors in my dad and a Mr. John Collins, formerly of the Atlantic Satellite Corporation. When it came to radios, antennas, electronics, and even getting some old equipment to tinker with, their influence here cannot be overstated. Dad, Mr. Collins, if by chance you're seeing this, thank you. This stuff absolutely consumed our summer days and nights, and our weekends and evenings during the school year. Ours was becoming a world of antennas, radio equipment, and basic orbital mechanics, the two-line Keplerian elements that encode the parameters of a satellite's orbit. We tried, and we failed, a lot. So much so that our families and our friends thought we were kind of nuts, a little like chasing windmills, you know? Until we succeeded. Eventually, we got good enough at what we were doing, and we were routinely listening to telemetry from NOAA weather satellites of the American TIROS N series, and Russian Cicada series Navsats, and Russian Meteor 3 series weather satellites. And sometimes we even viewed them outdoors on nighttime passes. Wouldn't it be great, we thought, if we could do this and hear humans when they were traveling in space? Great idea, but the space shuttles that launched from Florida mostly didn't have orbital inclinations that would place them over the New York metropolitan area. And even when they did, we might be able to see them on a nighttime pass, but we'd never be able to listen in. The frequencies they used were so high that the equipment to do so was simply out of our reach. But the Russians were another story. They launched from Kazakhstan, and that physics put them in an orbital inclination of 51.6 degrees. As seen here, it's the same orbit flown by the ISS today. They'd be flying right over us. And from our research, we knew that they had a tracking ship, much like this one seen here, off of Sable Island near Nova Scotia. They'd be talking to that ship for certain. Better still, they had beacons and voice channels that operated within the range of our shortwave and VHF radio equipment. If we got the math right, we knew that we had an opportunity to intercept at least a portion of those communications. Armed with these radios right here, and little more than a calculator, a plexiglass-covered map, and a grease pencil, we were able to take the prediction bulletins from NASA, basically sheets of numbers with those Keplerian elements we spoke of, translate them, and manually plot the orbit for a given pass to predict when to look and when to listen. And wouldn't you know it, we were ultimately successful. On this cassette tape right here, you can hear it for yourself. The very first time this equipment right here, sitting in my bedroom, detected the cosmonauts of Soyuz T-13, Vladimir Dzhanibekov and Viktor Savignyk, live from the Soyuz 7 space station, as they passed overhead on Soyuz orbit number 18865 on July 27, 1985. Let's give it a listen.
Подстроили немножко Ниву. Вот по скорости, вот подрегулировали. У нас Takin. Вот были граничные зоны на нитах, значит там свет срывается на 2 примерно 3 минуты, а потом дальше снова хороший цвет. В Москве иной раз.
Pretty neat, wouldn't you say? If anything, we were different and pretty dogged in our efforts. We eventually got good enough at things that we would set recorders on cheap Radio Shack timers for the overnight passes so that we didn't have to stay up all night to listen in. We could simply check the recorders in the morning. As a human interest story, we even found ourselves highlighted in a local newspaper a couple of times, and in a case of the students becoming the teachers, we even were making presentations to the adults of the local amateur radio group on the art of our special kind of eavesdropping. We'd continue learning and listening to Soyuz T-14 and Soyuz T-15 after that, the latter being the first and only spaceflight to ever visit 2 different space stations in one mission, Soyuz 7 and Mir. From there, Phil was off to college and I'd shortly be off to the US Navy. And even through decades of time and living on different coasts, we've remained as close as brothers today, still very much connected by space exploration and a very unique shared history. This hobby in these times unquestionably left an indelible imprint on the memories of my youth. And it's this signed photo that hangs in my office today that acts as the connective tissue every time I look at it to Soyuz T-13 and the story of two teenage kids from New Jersey whose mutual interest in spaceflight took them on an incredible journey. A Cold War version of Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn, sailing not the waters of the Mississippi, but a sea of momentary and brilliantly interrupted static from outer space. That we were sneaking a peek in on the unknown world of Soviet Russia in 1985, it couldn't have been filled with more intrigue. So that's the story. I hope you've enjoyed seeing this artifact and learning a little bit about the amazing mission of Soyuz T-13, its significance in the annals of space history, and the role it played in the formative years of two teenagers some 35 years ago. I know I've enjoyed reliving these moments and sharing these stories with you. You know, in 2020, if you want to find out where the International Space Station is, when it's going to pass overhead, or even watch live video, there's an app for that. All you have to do is go to the internet. For students or anyone with an interest today, you'd be so much better equipped than we were in 1985. That being said, I do hope that in sharing the learning adventure that Phil and I undertook in the early to mid 1980s, that some of you will be inspired to take up an interest and perhaps a passion for something related to science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics. If you're lucky, you'll be like us. You may find your direction in life, you'll share a journey with your BFF, and you'll come away with memories to last you a lifetime. To mi fratello Felipe, we all owe it to someone, buddy, and in my case, that's you. You taught me so much, and that journey to the stars, well, I couldn't think of a better person or a better friend to share the trip with. You were and remain the best there is, and I hope that you think I've done our story some justice. Next time, you're making a guest appearance. And finally, to all of you watching, thank you for tuning into this channel. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give it a thumbs up down below, and feel free to let me know your thoughts by dropping me an email at jim.takenupspace@gmail.com. Until next time, collectors and space fans, keep your head held high and keep your eyes on the stars.